Hi, and welcome to If These Pages Could Talk. Today we are talking about everybody's two favorite holidays, Christmas and Arbor Day, or at least why it should be your two favorite holidays. How to get your book into a local library, picking a title, and more. But first, I'm Kiersten Marcil, author and adventurer into history. I'm here with my co-host,
Sevannah Storm, romance author.
And we are here with David. So please introduce yourself.
David Thurston, first-time author, and I didn't realize we needed to have a nice pithy introduction for ourselves. I would have thought of a better one.
Well, wing it.
That's okay. We'll get you rolling, then you'll be like a pro. Awesome. Well, if you've tuned into one of our episodes before, you know we always like to start with a little bit of an icebreaker. And David's website really fascinated me. So we are going to start by just quick. Yeah, oh no, this is good. Like I can tell there's a story here, so I want to hear it. We are going to show you our biopic and then tell you what the story is behind that photograph. But David, usually we let the guests go first, but I'm going to have you go last because I understand there is in fact a story.
Well, okay then.
Okay.
Oh, so that puts me on the spot, right? No. Surprise. All right, let's see if this works. Let's see. I don't know. No,
and if you can't see it, yeah, you just got to go to our websites too. There we go.
It's sort of funny. All right. There we go. Got the angle.
Yes.
There we go. Okay. That is my biopic. I paid to have makeup done and hair and professional photography.
Wow.
Yes. And then I heard somewhere that you must have the same photo and the same handle across all your social media. And that's what I have.
Excellent. Yeah. I love it. Mine is a selfie. I took this during COVID. And so it's sort of strategically cut so that you can't see the gray in my roots. But I'm there in my home library in front of some of my books before they moved back there.
Your favorite books?
Yes. And David.
All right. Well, here is mine. Let's see if I can get that nice and centered.
Yeah, stunning.
So that is actually a photo that my wife took of me. It's a completely candid shot, and we are at a wine tasting. And we are 4 very heavy pours into a wine tasting right there. And I've always liked this picture of me because I feel like it looks the most like I think I look. Because let's take one other example. Here's me on LinkedIn, and here's me. I don't like the way I look in posed and intentionally taken photos. And so I was very happy to have an option that was more candid, a little more loose, and a little more comfortable, and I felt like that looked more like myself. Awesome. And in terms of an author photo, it works a little better if you can see a little more of it, because I am holding a pen there because we're taking notes and I'm like gesturing with the pen. So yeah, that's where that author photo came from. And so you can kind of tell in the background, you've got the wife or the wine tons going on in the background and all that fun stuff. It was a very fantastic winery up in Maryland called.
So 3 of your loves: wine, writing, and your wife.
Exactly. And I was going to try to plug the winery and I immediately forgot their name. So.
Oh my gosh. Well, maybe if we get it by the end. All right. So speaking of your bio, David, yes. You said in your bio, he spends his Decembers binging Hallmark Christmas movies, which I just love.
Yes. And sometimes my Julys.
Yes. Yeah. Do you have a favorite?
You know something? I actually thought you might ask that. And the funny thing with Hallmark movies, I actually do have favorites, and I had to go look them all up because I don't know the titles of any of my favorites. Because the problem with Hallmark movies is they all have just such generic titles, and they don't say anything about the movie itself. And so I had to actually look them up. And one of my favorites is called Merry and Bright, which is based on a candy cane company. And it is Andrew Walker plays a business business manager that comes into this candy cane company and starts trying to change the way they make candy canes and get them to make chocolates instead of just candy canes, and that's bad because it's not really, I don't feel like it's ever really explained why it's bad, but it's bad because it's a Hallmark movie and he's the guy coming in trying to change things and not realizing that the way things are is perfectly fine. So that's just sort of the typical one that I like to yell at. And then another one that I just absolutely love is there was one that Henry Winkler did about a decade ago called The Most Wonderful Time of the Year, which again, most generic title. It doesn't say anything about the movie itself, but he plays a uncle who is trying to set up his nephew and this no, I'm sorry, he's trying to set up his niece and a guy who she's helping out that she met at the airport, and he keeps playing the same recorded news report over and over again about the airport being closed down, so that they keep having to host him, and he keeps not being able to leave. And love that one. And then more recently, I think Three Wise Men and a Baby, but everybody loves that one. So
that's awesome. Do you have like a special comfort ritual when you sit down to watch?
Honestly, most of the time that I'm watching them, they're sort of my comfort food television. So I've kind of got them in the background while I'm doing almost anything else. One of the times that I really got into them was the first big summer of COVID. We decided to take the safest possible vacation, which was to go find a cabin in the woods for rent, take all of our own food so we didn't have to go to any restaurants, and just sort of chill out for a week there. And so we found this nice cabin in West Virginia, and it had terrible internet, but it had the Hallmark Channel, and it was the middle of July, so we just had Christmas in July on the whole time that we were in the cabin, just doing jigsaw puzzles, living life, just sort of enjoying some time together. And it was right before our son was born, right before things really got crazy. So yeah, it just sort of ends up being my comfort food television. And it can be nice to curl up with a nice mug of hot chocolate with one of the new ones, or I use Hallmark movie, not literally meaning things that just come on Hallmark, but when the new Netflix Hallmark movies come out, we have friends come over and we'll bust out the wine and we'll have dinner and just sort of enjoy watching them.
Yeah, I think my favorite is called The Spirit of Christmas. It's not technically a Hallmark movie, but it could be. It's really just sweet. This woman ends up at an inn. She is an attorney and has to get it sold, and it's haunted, of course, by the love interest. And
yes,
yeah, I adore that one. That one is, like you said, you watch it or you have it in the background. It's just fantastic.
Yes, I have seen that one. That one is very enjoyable. I think that one's one of the ones that ends up on the streaming channels a lot. So it's one that you can actually get in and watch. And yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite movie for Christmas or Christmas in July?
I think my top favorite movie, the one that I have to make sure that I watch, is A Christmas Story. And of course, I'm a Gen X guy, so of course I'm supposed to say A Christmas Story, but I love that movie. It's a great movie, nostalgia for an era that I never knew. So it's
right. Yeah, it's a great film. Sev, are you muted?
Yes, I am.
All right.
I'm flicking with the button again. Blame it. Mine is Goodbye Charlie. It's a 1960s, I think it is. It's got Debbie Reynolds in it and Pat Boone. And it's not a Christmas story per se, but it's about a guy who gets shot because he's having an affair. And he comes back as a woman. And he thinks he's cursed. And his best friend falls in love with him. So it's actually really, really funny. I just laugh right through it. Every single time.
Timing for me to have taken a drink of water.
That you must look at. It's really old, but it's I love it. I love it.
Oh my God, it sounds fantastic. Wow. So then, David, did your love of Hallmark Christmas movies, or that flavor, did that come before you wrote your book? After?
It came before, and it was sort of an expression of that love of those movies that led to the book, because they have such a comfortable formula. And I think what makes them good comfort food television is that for the most part, you know what's going to happen in a Hallmark movie. There's slight variations, there's different themes involved, but it's going to be, the person who loves Christmas, the person who doesn't love Christmas, they meet each other, and they bond over something brings them together, then there's some misunderstanding that breaks them apart, and then they come back together when they realize that no, this was all meant to be, and they kiss and the movie's over, and then the next one starts. And so
Yeah.
it's such a it's incredible that you can make it such a simple outline like that, but it works over and over again. And there's a reason they put out 40 of these on Hallmark and another 100 on various other networks, and it's a very similar formula each time, but it works each time because it's what people expect out of the story, and it's what comes together, and it's sort of the formula that I started to play around with and eventually turned into the book.
Awesome. Yeah, it's definitely it's a great way to unwind and unplug, I think, during the holiday season, because it's so easy to just get caught up in the season or just life and stress, and to just sit down. And my youngest son made fun of me because I had a Christmas where that was what I did all evening, and was just come home and throw on the TV. And he's like, how? Why? They're all the same. It's like, yes, exactly. You can just enjoy, make the cocoa, cuddle up. It's good. It's all good.
And if there's a run of like 4 in a row that have like the same male lead, it can be very confusing if you're not paying enough attention. It's like, wait, I thought he was dating that other. What happened to her? Oh, this is the next one.
I call them the Hallmark darlings, because they have their favorites, and and actually it's kind of nice to keep seeing the same ones.
That's why I really like 3 Wise Men and a Baby, since it brought 3 of them together into one movie.
Oh, all right, I'm gonna have to check that one out now. That's cool.
Yeah, it's got Andrew Walker, Tyler Haynes, Paul Campbell. Yes, I wrote those down in advance. I'm looking at my notes. I don't remember those names off the top of my head.
That was smart. My favorite Hallmark is not a Christmas one. It's something like October Falls. It's a woman can't quite find herself, and she becomes a nanny, and it leads into Halloween. That's my favorite Hallmark, but yeah.
Problem is, they've started eating up Halloween, because they're now starting the movies on like October 24th, and it's like, well, can't have any Halloween or Thanksgiving movies. Got to go right into Christmas. But that's actually kind of where this started coming from, is this whole notion of, yeah, but what if you took a town that believed in, and specifically the thought process was a town that treated Halloween the way that Hallmark towns treat Christmas, that had that just sort of pure spirit of Halloween. And I started just sort of riffing, because this all came about, and this goes actually back to that cabin in West Virginia. That's where the impetus of the book was. It sort of came back to riffing with my wife as to, oh, what about Halloween? Well, what about any other holiday? What about Arbor Day? What about some movie, A Christmas for Arbor Day? And then I started thinking about the idea. It's like, I think I could do something with that.
Yeah. That's fantastic. When is Arbor Day this year?
Arbor Day this year, it is the last Friday of April, and I need to remind myself this year that is the 28th of April.
Okay.
Things that I should know off the top of my head.
That's it. We reminded you. It's good.
Yes.
So how do we get from Arbor Day to Christmas?
Well, I told that joke, A Christmas for Arbor Day. And then I sat down and I was like, well, but there is a connection, because they both have trees. So what if it's a town that loves its Christmas tree farm so much that it treats Arbor Day as a second Christmas? And it just sort of snowballed from there. It went through a couple variations that were a little less serious until it finally started settling down, and I started actually taking the story seriously and figuring out that there was kind of an earnest story that I could put into this fairly ridiculous concept of, you know, some town that loves Arbor Day just so much, and they love Christmas trees so much that they have a second Christmas at Arbor Day. And so yeah, the random connection with the Christmas trees came to me, and then I was like, well, I guess I'm writing this thing now.
Brilliant. Am I gonna disrupt anything if I ask you to hold up your book even closer?
Absolutely not. I just sort of got that sitting on the back of the sofa, very, very subtly in frame.
So awesome. Oh my
there
gosh.
it is,
All right,
my
so-
lovely cover. Love this cover. I always love the sort of cartoonish style covers for sweet romances. So I was very happy when that came into my inbox.
I might be jumping out of queue here, but
That's okay.
is there a book too?
What
What are you working on currently?
I don't have a specific sequel planned for Christmas for Arbor Day. I think of most of my stories as sort of standalones. It's not to say that there will never be one. Get that to nicely in frame. They're perfect. So yeah, I tend to think of my stories mostly as standalone. So yes, I am working on the next story that is a romance novel, but it makes an oblique reference to A Christmas for Arbor Day, and that's it. It drops the name of the town just sort of as a reference. But the next one is about 40,000 words into the first draft, and it's about cicadas. And you know, over my shoulder, nice little cicada on the wall. I just sort of realized I didn't mean to frame it that way, but
It works perfectly.
but we love cicadas around here. So I live in Virginia, and so we had the Brood 10 17-year cicadas come out 2 summers ago. And 17 years ago, I wasn't a big fan of those because there's giant bugs flying around. And this time I just kind of fell in love with the cicadas. And it's just like, well, what if I, you know, take the love of cicadas and turn that into a book? And so that's the one that's currently in process right now. And working title on that one is Magicicada.
Oh my gosh,
which
that's
is
so cool.
Which is the Latin name of the 17-year cicadas.
Yeah. Oh wow. So now I gotta ask, because you just tweeted out a couple days ago from when we were recording this, you tweeted, "Bless me for I have sinned. I started a second work in progress when I'm well into my existing in my defense great open." Which one is the work in progress that got set aside?
That would be Magicicada that got set aside very briefly.
Okay.
I was on a business trip, and for some reason over the course of the business trip, the first chapter of one of my other concepts kept sort of coming together and insisting that I needed to write it down or else I was going to forget some ideas. So really I sat down, I wrote a chapter 1 to sort of introduce characters, introduce concepts, and then now that exists, I can put it aside again. I've saved it off into a Scrivener file, and I can get back to focus on the one that's a little bit more in progress and a little further along. Because yeah, I think in concepts, because honestly, you know, I've got the 2 that have actual words written, but if I actually go into and I'm browsing through my folders right now. It's a very bad time to do that, but I've got, let's see, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15
Wow.
plus 7 23 vague concepts that I've created Scrivener files for, and it's like these are going to be ones that maybe I'll end up writing, maybe I won't write, but it, you know, I at least think of log lines. And if I think of a log line, I want to quickly create a Scrivener file, put the log line into it so that one day I can come back to it and I don't have to remember all of them.
Yeah, I have a LinkedIn file account just for that purpose.
Yes, I could.
Yeah, I have a story doc.
I was going to ask you, Sev, because you have so many that you've published. Do you still keep like a huge file of ideas?
Yep. I have a Word document that's called Story Docs, and any idea goes in there. And if it stays with me, that's what Stephen King says. If the story stays with you, then it's meant to be written. So I just jot it down, and it's quite handy because you'll find someone says to you, "Hey, listen, do you want to do an anthology?" And I'm like, "Story doc. Yes, I can do an anthology. I have an idea." So that's what I use it for. But tomorrow is the 1st of April, and tomorrow is Camp NaNo. Do you do Camp NaNo? Do you do NaNoWriMo?
I've done NaNoWriMo in the past, years and years and years ago. I forget what year I first did NaNoWriMo. It would have been like 2009 or so. I first did NaNoWriMo. And I won that first year. I got to the end. I got the 50,000 words written, and finished up the plot of the book. Actually, I think I won like 4 or 5 straight nanos where, I was churning out books, and they were terrible, and I never bothered even trying to publish them. But it's sort of back in my previous life when I was mostly writing science fiction rather than romance.
Are you ever going to go back to science fiction? What about science fiction romance?
So funny you say that. The one that I did the first chapter of, the notion is that it is a love triangle with a programmer at a company, the security guard, and the AI that she has written.
Oh.
And so it's the one of the characters is meant to be an emergent AI who has become a little bit more self-aware than they were meant to be. And so I think that would definitely fall under the sci-fi romance category. And so that's why I sort of pitched that one as, what if the Hallmark Channel created Westworld?
Right.
Is it going to be a sweet romance?
The plan is yes. The plan is the underlying structure is that the piece of software that the AI comes from is for people who want to go in and experience a sweet romance and get to live through that life. And so he is created to be one of the romanceable protagonists within the sweet romance that you can insert yourself into. And so it is simultaneously a sweet romance while also itself containing a sweet romance. I don't know. It might be too high concept. We'll see if it ends up all coming together and working at the end, because I've got an end planned for it. I've got a starting point. The question is how I link those two together. Yeah, it's that 60,000 words that comes between the first chapter and the last chapter that I have in my head.
A saggy middle.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let's take you back to Christmas for Arbor Day.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. The one that I'm actually trying to pitch. Look, Christmas for Arbor Day. It's about to be Arbor Day. This is going live on April 15th. You got about 2 weeks for Arbor Day.
Tell us about the couple, though.
So the couple in A Christmas for Arbor Day, she is a long-term resident of the city of Balsam Valley, Wisconsin. She runs the stand in the middle of town that December and April serves as the Christmas tree stand for the town, and in between has other things going on. But the owner of it has passed away, and so she is hoping that she has the opportunity to maybe inherit the farm, but the male lead of it was her high school boyfriend, who left town to go get a business degree and is now working as a major real estate developer in Chicago. and is brought back to town when suddenly he gets a notice that he is a beneficiary of the will, and it turns out that while she gets the farm stand and the Christmas tree stand, he has actually inherited the farm itself that services everything. And he has this grand notion of revitalizing the town by tearing down the Christmas tree farm and building up a resort around the city. And so the main drama is built around her trying to convince him that no, we're allowed to have small towns and small Christmas tree farms, and it's okay to have that be the thing that exists and keeps this town alive.
Yeah, that's great. You definitely got that Hallmark feel to it. It's wonderful.
Oh
my
yeah.
God, it's great. I'm just curious, writing this book changed your opinions on Arbor Day?
I probably didn't go into it with a lot of opinions on Arbor Day. It was just sort of, my brain running through holidays one by one, until I hit Arbor Day and the connection. I honestly, if I had thought 10 minutes further, this might have very well been Earth Day instead of Arbor Day. Nice timing, same time of year, but yeah, I've made sure to start, following, Arbor Day Foundation and other groups that are doing, work towards, maintaining and making sure that there's still some green spaces in this country. And yeah, it's been very nice to sort of to sort of learn more about it as I've gone and get a little bit deeper into conservation and thoughts like that.
That's cool. Do you do book signings?
I have not. I don't actually do like sit down book signings. I'm very happy to quickly sign a copy for somebody. I think there's probably more signed copies of the book than unsigned that exist out in the world, because my mother-in-law wanted to hand some out, so I gave some to her and made sure to sign them first. Just yesterday, I stuck one in a little free library just to see what happens, and I signed that one before it went out the door. But I don't really do. I haven't. Doing a formal book signing means actually putting myself out there and talking to somebody and getting them to agree to let me take up space in their store. And I have a hard time believing that I am to that point yet, even though I am. I've got a book and it's published and everything. It's getting over my imposter syndrome to actually sit down and be like, no, you should have me in your store, and I should sit here and occupy your store for 2 hours. And I swear, maybe somebody will come in and actually want to talk to me. Maybe it could happen. Stranger things have happened, I'm sure. So
maybe if there's any local Earth Day events, Arbor Day events, craft fairs, maybe that can get you going. Oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. Oh, so we were all happy for you in CBG land. Yes, because you are now in your local library.
Soon to be, yes. Books are on order.
Woohoo! How did that come about?
Honestly, I asked. I knew I was just sort of looking at the library's website the other day, and I found that they had a form where you could suggest a book for the shelves. And I figured, what the heck? The worst thing that happens is they open up the email and they say no, and I have just as many books on their shelf before they say no as after. And I made sure, I was filling out the form for my own book, and I actually made sure, because there's a little spot that says, how did you learn about this book? And I said, I am the author. I didn't want to go in. I didn't want to pretend that I was some disinterested third party. I mean, I had to put in my library book or my library card number. They could easily, say, the author's name and the guy who's requesting it seems to be pretty similar. Mm-hmm. But I can't speak obviously to all libraries, but I'm in Fairfax County, Virginia. As I further dox myself for saying Virginia and then Fairfax County. And what I have learned is they are extremely supportive of local authors who are independently and published by small publishers. They're not necessarily going to go out there and grab everybody's self-published book, but apparently if you come to them and it's like, I'm a recently published indie author with this small press, they are very supportive and they have specific money in their budget to get copies of those books. And so in my case, it's going to be 5 copies that get spread out throughout Fairfax County, including the library just up the street from me. So
fantastic.
I was pleasantly surprised. I would have been thrilled with 1 and they got 5.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it really is. Oh my gosh, that's great. And so okay.
Is Kiersten gonna rush out now and go and see her library?
I do need to, you know, because my husband is on a first name basis with all of our librarians. You know, we're part of the same system, but when we moved from one county to the other, he just kept going to our original branch, which you can. So like they constantly, like I put out my bookmarks all the time and they just disappear, which is nice. But I do need to do what David did and actually get up the gumption to just ask them to carry my book at this point.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I have heard people ask and they say I am the author, and that is a red flag where the library will turn it down. I mean, it's county by county, it's library by library. I just happen to apparently live in a county that is very supportive of small local authors. So, and somehow not only did they get 5 of them, but there's 3 people waiting for them to show up because there's already 3 holds on those 5 copies.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting.
Okay, I'll take it.
Great. That's great.
Yeah. Well,
you're filling a need for people, like
I
the Hallmark
guess.
home. Yeah, you are. You're giving them that happy place, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Congrats. Oh my gosh. So I want to skip ahead to titles because you've got a great title.
Thank you.
And it sounds like that, like you said, you deal in concepts. So titles come to you early on?
Titles come to me very early on. In the case of A Christmas for Arbor Day, like I told with the story, I literally had the title before I had any aspect of plot for it. So that one was completely working backwards from a title. But in a lot of times it is, you know, I come up with a weird little concept because I don't want to, I'm not making fun. I'm not doing parodies of Hallmark because I think that's boring. I think a lot of people try to do that and I've never seen one that works in the end. So the joke that I want to tell is creating a ridiculous concept, a ridiculous thing to write the story around, and then making it be very earnest. And so, but in doing so, yeah, usually something along the lines of the title, I either end up working backwards from the title or the title, you know, comes about very early on in trying to figure out who the characters are and what I want them to be doing, because it makes, and it ends up making the book feel a little bit more real for me, and it gives me something to connect back to on them. So and my writers group is always knows it's coming because I always go into the Slack and I always start with so, and it's just that on it, so period, so, and then like for the next couple of posts I'll be like, so this is who she is, and this is who he is, and this is what brings them together, this is what breaks them apart. Then here's the super corny title that I came up with and I'm super proud of, that's going to tie it all together.
Oh, that's awesome. Because I know some authors have like a hard time. You see tweets about it all the time in the writing community of coming up with a title. And I know I actually have a book from the same universe as The Enlightened that I just haven't quite found the right title for. So I think you have a gift.
And it used to be something I was no good at. Back in my sci-fi short story days, I was terrible at titles, and titles would elude me until like suddenly I needed a title because I was trying to send a story out the door to an anthology, and it's like, well, I guess I got to call it something. So
Oh, funny.
So
how are you? Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
No, you finish, because then I was going to ask Sev.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have literally had short stories that were just called untitled until like 10 minutes before I needed to hit the send button. It's like, I gotta call it something.
Oh, wow. Are you happy with the title of those stories in the end?
Usually, I mean, I usually something ended up clicking with me and coming together.
The pressure.
Sometimes better than others.
Last minute pressure.
Yeah. How are you with titles, Sev?
If I get a concept, I have it, and then I start writing. I have the title, I have the cover, I have the book template sorted, everything up to chapter 1. In fact, I do all my chapter headings, and then I'll put in text there that says, words go here. So it's all in the right format and everything. So I have everything sorted beforehand.
So that's where the words go.
Yeah, that's
those little blank spots.
No, it just says words go, yeah. So that's in Times New Roman 11 indented. So that's perfect.
So Sevannah, do you do titles for your chapters?
I used to, and then I discovered that Champagne doesn't like it that much. For the Huntress, I have to, because that's what I did way for the Huntress. And obviously everything in the Huntress series, I have to have titles. But after that, when I discovered they don't like it, I just stopped.
Okay.
Yeah.
David, how about you? Did you start with them?
I have written books in the past that have chapter titles, but I kind of abandoned that a while ago, and there were never chapter titles for Arbor Day.
Okay. I have that like a couple in my head, but I never thought to. I feel like they'd be spoilers for me, so that's why I didn't put chapter titles. But now I know I can't, even if I wanted to. Is Christmas for Arbor Day? Is that your debut novel?
It is. It is the first one that I actually got the gumption to send to a publisher and ask somebody to publish.
Okay. So how did you get into writing first?
I had been writing for so long that I can't actually think of a time when I wasn't writing. You know, even back in like high school and middle school, it's always like, I feel like I should be trying to write, and I'm no good at it because I'm a middle schooler and all I read is Star Trek novels and all I try to write is Star Trek novels. But you know, just over the years, I just kept at it, and it is just sort of, it's a compulsion. It's like something that insists upon itself. It's like I feel like I am supposed to be a writer, and that feeling has existed for so long that I can't point at a moment where it's like, that's where it started. That's when I knew that I needed to be writing something, because it's just always been hanging out there in the back of my head.
Oh, that's so interesting. Sev, are you the same way?
I started when I was younger. I used to love writing pencil on a notepad. And then I abandoned it when I turned like 26. I was like, I've got a life, I've got a career. And then I took it up again in 2017.
So David, then what sorry, so what, David, got you from, if you've written books before, what was it about this one that gave you the courage, the inspiration to put it out there and try and get it published?
It was a lot of people pushing me to do it. People who have been beta readers and part of my co-beta reading community for the last 15, 20 years are like, you know, there's something different about this one. And there's something about this one that feels like it's actually got a shot. And it was the most fun that I had writing something in so long. Because honestly, you know, I had written so much, and I sort of hit almost a full 10 years where I kept starting books and starting books and starting books and never managing to get past like chapter 2 or 3. The concept just wouldn't hold together. It wouldn't keep my interest. And then I started doing this, and it felt special. It felt different. It felt new. And it's like, and the timing worked with there's a Twitter event, and they don't unfortunately do it anymore, and I miss it so much, called Rev Pit, which, no, Pit, Pit Mad. It was Pit Mad,
Yeah.
not Rev Pit. Rev Pit's a different one that's going on right now, but Pit Mad. And Cassie used to troll Pit Mad and make sure that she was looking at the pitches. And so I was just like, what does it hurt? The same way that got me to the library. It's like, what does it hurt? Well, let's just try it. Let's just throw it out there. And, maybe there's another version of me that got that, 6 years ago with the most recent, sci-fi novel that I actually took from start to finish that, could have actually sat down and done that. But, I think it was just the timing of it all and just a very supportive group of people saying, no, this is special. This is different. We love this. You've got to put this out there.
Oh, that's
And
so
Cassie
wonderful.
likes Christmas and actual holiday romances. She loves it. So if anyone is
So-
out there and you've got a Christmas story, pitch it.
Mhm.
Pitch it.
Yeah.
And somehow my signal made it through the noise of all of the tweets going out that day.
There we go. It was meant to be.
Yep.
Yeah, that's amazing. Good for you. So do you think then you'll stick with romance for a little bit? Because I noticed that's in your website.
At least for a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like the mode that I'm in, and it's sort of the way that I'm thinking right now. And in fact, even if I, one of the reasons that I think people started pushing me in the direction of sending this out and finishing this is that even when I was writing science fiction, this is how I was writing. I was writing in a very specific way that lends itself more to telling a romance story. And in fact, the last sci-fi novel that I finished, it really was, at the end, it was a romance story that took place on a generation ship as much as it was a science fiction murder mystery novel. And it was just like, this is where you should focus. And it feels good to write, and it feels comfortable to write. And so it's probably what I'm going to keep up with for a while.
That's awesome.
I love writing sci-fi romance. You can invent so many different things. You need a different
absolutely.
tool, no problem. You need a planet, no problem. An alien
Mhm.
species, no problem. I love it. It's my go-to. But I did write a modern romance, and it flowed. It was fun to write. Giggled right through it all. Lovely experience. But sci-fi romance is my thing.
David, which genres do you read?
I do a lot. I try to read a little bit of romance just to sort of keep my toes in and see what other people are doing in the genre. Probably, honestly, not as much as I should as a romance writer. I will admit that. I read some science fiction, but mostly, and it's interesting, is whenever I'm writing, I always find myself floating towards listening to nonfiction as much as anything else. And especially like micro histories and strange biographies, if that makes any sense. Like the book I'm listening to right now is a biography of the man who popularized lobotomy as a medical procedure, which is about as far from a romance novel as you could probably get, because it's not an easy listen, but it's fascinating, and I'm enjoying it is probably not quite the right word, but I'm definitely interested and keeping up with it. So yeah, I a lot of my favorite books end up tending to be nonfiction rather than fiction.
That's so interesting.
And try and sneak a lobotomy into your next romance.
Yeah, exactly. You see, that's dangerous, because then I will come up with a title and I'll be like, oh nope, gotta put the title down.
It can even be an insult.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, my husband is very into podcasts, and it's I forget what the two favorites are, but it's stuff you didn't learn in history class or stuff you should know. Yeah, and so that sounds like exactly the sort of thing that he'll bring home and tell me about over dinner. And he's like, no, you got to listen to this section. I'm like, good, I'm eating.
Yeah, I occasionally will get into those. Occasionally get into a little bit of true crime. But But yeah, I usually end up wandering back to macabre history and weird history. I mean, it's not all murderers and people cutting up brains, but you know, it's more often than I probably should. That's where I land. But
Well,
then
you
I'll
mentioned
read something about, you know, the old sport of pedestrianism, which was, you know, people would pay to watch people walk around in a circle for a week on end. And that was actually the first sport exhibited at Madison Square Garden when Madison Square Garden originally opened. The very first one, it was just people walking in a circle. It was called pedestrianism. Who could walk the most laps in a week?
oh my God, that's wild.
It's crazy, and it was
Pre-TV.
exactly.
Oh my gosh, how interesting.
I watch a
this is
channel called Well I Never on YouTube, and it's about murders that took place in the 1900s. It's fascinating.
It
I know.
sounds like
Yeah, my theory with stuff like that is I can enjoy it if I knew that everybody involved would be dead by now anyway.
yes. Yeah.
That's a weird line in the sand to draw. I understand that, but that feels like it's sort of the line in the sand that I can draw with stuff like that.
No, I totally get that because, you know, I write historical, I write the Revolutionary War, and of
Right.
course there's politics and anger and violence and what have you. And I can read about that and, you know, watch videos on that all day, but put on the news and I'm like, oh, I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
done. I don't need to hear that anymore. Yeah, no, I totally get that. You know, you mentioned in your other book that you had started that it was a murder sci-fi romance. Do you think you might go back to it, or?
I've been thinking about going back to that one. It's probably the one of my old sci-fi trunk novels that could be cleaned up and might end up being something that could actually get pitched out there and might get some interest. It is the first murder being investigated on a generation ship that is about a year out from Earth.
And who is your editor at Champagne?
I need to remember who that is off the top of my head. That is one of those
Wow, it was
things
such
that
a
I should be able
smooth
to
edit
tell
on
you,
his
but
part.
Wow.
it's
Not
Sarah.
that, not that Jody was. I keep in touch with my editor, so like we're friends outside of publishing, and so yeah, that's funny. Okay, did you figure it out?
Oh yeah, my editor is Sarah.
Okay. Because you just pitch directly to Sarah then when you're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun thing
Oh yeah,
about Champagne.
I might do that. I just have to make sure that I'm happy with it
Yeah.
and clean it up a little bit. You know, it kind of wandered through the story in its current form, and it needs to be tightened up and it needs to be made a little bit more interesting. But you know, a murder mystery on a generation ship where they find stowaways. You know, there's nothing interesting inherently about that.
Yeah, I wrote
sounds
that.
like good bones.
I
yeah,
wrote a
maybe-
sci-fi mystery without romance. Yeah, it's about someone's killing AI, artificial like cyborgs.
That's got quite a good ethical.
Yeah,
question.
and then
That's good.
posing them, and because how it works is you get a stamp. Each owner has their own stamp, so you can see how old a cyborg is by the number of stamps they have on their body. And the latest stamp is how the person kills them. So if they've got a sunburst, then they're splintered. The cyborg is splintered. Yeah.
Yeah, this whole concept, my concept came to me after the first and will probably be the last time I went on a cruise, and thinking how horrific it would be if you were on a generation ship that was run by a cruise company, because that was the only people they could think of to run the place.
Well, they've got experience.
And exactly, they've got that experience in
It's logical.
keeping people occupied. And so like the
And
very
fed.
first scene takes place on bingo night.
Oh, I love it. Love it already.
It's a generation ship that has bingo every night.
Oh, that's great.
You know, you're making me talk about this story again, and maybe I, you know, when I'm done with the cicada book, maybe I'll sit down and see if it's salvageable and see if it's editable.
Yeah,
There you go.
I believe you must invest in your babies. Yeah.
All right, friends, we are out of time. So David, is
Oh,
your
wow.
book in reach? You want to, I know that went fast. You want to show us your book one more time? Everybody check out David's book, A Christmas for Arbor Day, especially because we are recording right before Arbor Day. Please
Perfect time to go get a copy.
Yes. Please like this video, follow us, subscribe, depending on where you're seeing us. Our links are below, and have a great day. Oh, David, where do we find you online? I forgot the most important question.
I am Thurston Romance in just about every place that I am. So Thurston Romance on Twitter, Thurston Romance on Facebook, Thurston Romance on Instagram, all one word, Thurston Romance.
That is perfect branding right there.
I managed to pull off some good branding, and also thurstonromance.com, though I don't update that very frequently, but if you find me, that's where I am.
Excellent. And we will have your website below. So that'll be like a good branching off place for everybody. So, all right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
And everybody have a great day.
Have a great day.